A young woman's voice echoes her first and last wish, for all of her works to be burned. She gently holds a distraught Loki's face, pleading for him to make a promise. It all started at an orphanage on a hill, a place filled with the laughter of children playing. A young boy with light hair turns from the window, drawn by a sound. From outside, a small hand taps insistently on the glass. Suddenly, a pair of hands grabs his face, demanding his attention. A young girl, Isia, excitedly tells Loki that her paintings are making miracles happen, her hands still cupping his startled face. Isia reminds Loki of the painting she made with her blood when she ran out of paint, explaining it cured the director's illness. Her excitement is cut short by a violent coughing fit. Smiling through the blood dripping from her mouth, she exclaims that it happened again to Loki's shock. The director rushes into the room, calling out Asia's name. He chides her for running off while she is sick, but Asia apologizes, explaining she was just eager to tell Loki the news. Holding his hand, Isia beams and explains her eagerness, telling Loki it's because he's her best friend. Loki is taken aback, blushing at the thought of being her best friend. He remembers that the very first thing he ever saw was Isia, coughing up blood. Loki recalls the moment he first opened his eyes, feeling empty and vacant, until a young girl cheerfully introduced herself as Isia. Loki remembers all the things Isia taught him, about the orphanage, how to read about the outside world, and why she had to stay inside. He resolved then to protect her smile forever. He remembers how much she loved to draw, often watching her as she worked. The director calls to Isia from the window, telling her to look outside. A large crowd had gathered, all drawn by the rumors of her power. The director explains that though they are all different, every one of them wants to be saved. He urges her to take up her brush and fulfill her duty, which she and Loki agree to. When Isia used her own blood, her paintings performed true miracles, healing the sick and restoring what was lost. With rumors of her abilities spreading across the continent, Isia dedicated herself completely to her paintings. She turned to Loki, her eyes shining with joy, and asked if it was not amazing. Loki agreed wholeheartedly. When she was happy, so was he. Isia teases Loki for getting carried away, but adds that it is because he is strong that he can both scold and encourage her. Hearing her describe him as a strong person filled him with warmth. Blushing, he tells her not to get carried away, wanting to live up to her image of him. The two of them share a happy, carefree laugh. While looking at a picture book, Isia playfully compared Loki to the bad guy, saying he was not stupid like him. She then showed him a painting of a house, asking him to promise they would live there one day. Loki agreed to help. Later, when Isia was upset that other kids called her creepy, Loki told her to ignore them, reassuring her that she was a talented painter. That night, a loud crash of thunder woke Loki from his sleep. He finds Isia hiding under the covers, and tells her it's silly to cry over thunder, promising he is right there. Isia cries out his name, reaching for him in her fear. Loki watches over her, a comforting presence in the stormy night. Loki silently vows to protect her. His resolve is unwavering. Isia sniffles, telling him she is glad he is there and is not scared as long as he is with her. With tears in her eyes, she tells Loki that she loves him. Loki responds with a gentle, reassuring smile as another clap of thunder sounds. Suddenly, a large, burly man enters their room, looming over their bed. Loki and Isia stare up at him in shock and fear. The man mutters that this is all her fault, while Loki demands that he leave. The man violently grabs Isia by the throat as Loki screams her name. Enraged, the man blames Isia's paintings for the death of his family and threatens to kill her, while Loki lunges at him. Loki lunges to stop the man, but his body passes straight through the attacker. He falls to the floor, completely unable to interact with the physical world. A piece of paper, a drawing, flutters to the ground. While others rush in to subdue the man, Loki is frozen in despair, watching helplessly as Isia struggles, calling his name. Loki screams in frustration, wondering why he cannot touch him. His eyes fall upon a child's drawing of himself lying on the floor. In the background, the director orders the man to be captured. Loki rushes to Isia's side as she collapses into a coughing fit. Loki gently places a coat over Isia's shoulders. He stands watching the director deal with the subdued attacker. He tells Isia that it is all right now. Recalling the emptiness he felt when he first awoke, he now understands why. The terrible truth dawns on him. He was invisible to her. When he called out to her, she did not hear. When he tried to hold her, she did not feel it. No matter how much he wished, he was bound to the drawing she created. With tears of anguish, he realizes he was nothing more than a sketch made by Isia. Kneeling beside her bed, he sobs, apologizing for his failure to protect her. The following morning, the director is called. A nun reports that the attacker from the previous night keeps muttering that a monster from a painting killed his family. The director dismisses the claim, suggesting it was a robber after the paintings, and orders the man be handed to the military police. Asia, looking pale and withdrawn, calls out to the director as he approaches her room. Wrapped in a hood and blanket, Asia tearfully asks if she failed to make everyone happy. The director gently takes her hand. He insists she must not quit, reminding her of all the people she saved. He adds that Loki would also want her to continue. The director lies, telling Asia he can hear Loki urging her to keep going. Loki screams that he just wants her to smile and that she should stop painting for others. Believing the director's lie, Asia smiles through her tears and agrees to keep going for Loki's sake. Loki looks on in despair, his plea unheard. Kneeling by her bed, he is powerless as the director calls him an idiot. The director gravely states that her safety is the most important thing. He announces she will be adopted by an aristocrat to ensure she is in a secure place, leaving Asia and Loki confused. Loki looks on, helpless. Embracing her, the director says that it is for her own good, asking if she understands. A carriage arrives at the orphanage to take Asia away. Loki watches silently as she is bid farewell. Inside the carriage, he overhears the nuns gossiping, confirming his fears. The director orchestrated the attack to sell her off. Loki seethes with silent rage at the deception. A cheerful, portly aristocrat welcomes them to a massive estate, promising to be Asia's strength in sickness and in painting. He declares her one of them now, and Asia marvels at the grand hall, amazed that this will be her home. The man leads them towards her new room. He leads them into a circular room in a tower, filled with canvases and a single bed. The man's welcoming smile turns sinister as Loki and Asia look on in horror. A heavy shackle is clamped around Asia's ankle. The man explains she will be given 2 meals a day and will paint for him the rest of the time, with transfusions if needed. He proposes they work together, claiming he too wants to make people happy. He calls her his beloved daughter, leaving her chained in the dark room. Loki screams that this is unbelievable and not okay at all. Asia tries to comfort him, insisting it's okay because nothing has changed and she still has him. With a pained expression, Asia tries to insist that everything is all right. The cruel words of the past echo in her memory, reminding her of her exploitation and the pain it caused. Loki embraces her as she breaks down, clutching his drawing. Looking out at the moonlit mansion, Loki's grief turns to a cold, hard resolve. He hates humans. In the present day, the once grand mansion is now a crumbling ruin. In a nearby town, life goes on as usual. Inside a bar, a patron starts to spread a rumor. 2 men discuss the discovery of another dead body found inside a cocoon. The rumors have the whole town wondering if a monster is nearby. One of the men notices a cloaked figure carrying a large ornate object and calls out to him. Mistaking him for a peddler, the man warns him to be careful of a scary monster in the woods. A hand reaches for the object on Loki's back. Loki reacts instantly, twisting to intercept the man's hand with the large frame. The bar patrons look on in surprise. His earring crackles with a faint energy. Loki glares at the man, his teeth bared, and warns him not to touch him. He then departs, leaving the stunned patrons behind as he heads into the woods. Deep in the woods, Loki stops to catch his breath. He's clearly been pushing himself hard. He hears Asia's voice in his memory, asking him to promise her. Getting his bearings, he realizes he must be close to his destination. He stands over the desiccated remains of a creature encased in a cocoon, confirming the rumors he heard in town. The rumors were about strange corpses with no blood, found in massive cocoons. From the foliage, a trapped girl pleads for help, crying that she doesn't want to die. A man with a strange mark on his forehead mockingly asks the girl if she really thinks she can be saved. He sits casually on a cart amidst the carnage, looking down on her. He questions why she thinks she is special enough to be the only one to live. He throws something through the air. Severed heads roll to a stop near the terrified girl. She shrieks in horror at the gruesome sight. The girl screams in terror. The man laughs, sadistically telling her to give it her all and try to escape. A giant, monstrous spider emerges, chasing the fleeing girl as she cries for help. Loki intercepts the monster's attack, shielding the girl with his large frame. He skillfully dodges another of the creature's strikes. He tells the girl she is in his way and orders her to leave. The man is shocked by this unexpected turn of events. The man demands to know who Loki is, annoyed at the interruption. Loki calmly asks if the man is the owner of this painting. The man seems amused that the creature does not faze Loki. He confirms that he owns the famous creature. The man reveals the monster is one of the infamous witch's monstrous paintings. He claims it is an important business partner, though he admits feeding it is a problem. He menacingly explains that the painting drinks blood. Loki clenches his fist, realizing he has found the source of the bloodless corpses. Loki tells the man to watch closely. He prepares to activate his weapon, calling out its name, Solution Frame Type 3. The ornate frame begins to shift and transform. A blade extends from the frame's handle. The transformation completes, revealing a massive, intricate sword. With his weapon ready, Loki prepares to strike the monster, shocking its owner. Loki reveals the painting's identity, piece number 20, Small Friend, originally drawn to help an elderly person with pest control. He sadly notes that the creature has become very ugly. The man scoffs at Loki's explanation. He boasts that he is putting the creature's power to good use. He reveals the creature's true strength, declaring it to be immortal. Loki swiftly cuts down the monstrous painting's limbs. He explains that the creature will always regenerate as long as there is blood, and that he is here to end it for good. The man looks on, stunned by Loki's knowledge and power. Loki drives his blade through the man's chest. He sends the man's body flying with a powerful kick. With a snarl, he declares that humans are a nuisance. He states that their fragile, bleeding bodies only serve to corrupt the paintings further. Standing over the subdued monster, Loki rests his blade on its head. He tells the painting that this corrupted existence was not the reason it was created. A memory surfaces, and he hears Aicia's voice calling his name. In a memory, Aicia tells Loki that people have started calling her creations the witch's monstrous paintings. She explains that the paintings are being used for evil, seeking blood, and that people are blaming it on a witch's curse. Loki listens grimly as she speaks, coughing weakly. She looks at the blood on her bandaged hand, sadly recalling that it was meant to bring happiness. Tears in her eyes, she asks why everything turned out so wrong. She tells Loki that since her paintings now bring misery, she has decided what to do. With a heavy heart, Aicia bids Loki farewell. She explains that she does not have much time left, and he is the only one she can turn to. She begins to alter the drawing of Loki with her blood, explaining that she did not want to use it on herself. As she draws, Loki feels a strange sensation, his form beginning to change. He looks at his hand, which is becoming solid and real. He realizes what is happening. Aicia apologizes, pulling on his now tangible clothes as she completes her work. With a final, decisive motion, Aicia rips the drawing of Loki in two. Loki cries out in pain and confusion, asking why she would do that. She explains that she would rather he be free than belong to someone else, far from her. She tells him she has one final wish to ask of him. She holds the torn pieces of his former existence in her hands. Cupping his now real face, she tells him she wants him to burn them all. Her first and last wish is for him to destroy her paintings and save those affected by her curse. Weakly, she begs him to promise. From her window, Aicia watches the ashes of the drawing scatter. She thinks of Loki, her kind, tough Loki, who is hers alone. In the present, Loki prepares to seal the corrupted painting, piece number 20, Small Friend. He invokes his promise, acting in the name of the witch. With a powerful downward strike, Loki declares he will seal the creature. The monster is drawn back into the painting, its form changing back to its original state. The frame of his weapon cracks under the strain of the sealing. The monstrous painting is sealed, restored to its original peaceful image. A memory flashes of young Aicia proudly showing Loki her finished work, happy to be giving it to an old man. As the sealing process completes, the area is filled with an illusion of blooming roses. Loki stands amidst the falling petals, his mission accomplished. A symbol glows in his eye, signifying the power he wields. He counts this as the 41st painting he has dealt with. He knows there are still unrecovered paintings in the area, remembering the day Aicia first gave him his mission. Her wish was for him to save the people affected by her curse and her paintings. He reflects that the one person he wanted to save more than anyone was Aicia. He stands before Aicia's grave, acknowledging that she was the one he wished to save. 109 springs have passed since Aicia died, and Loki continues his vigil at her grave. His promise to her remains unfulfilled, and he questions what his future holds. The memory of her face as she asked him to promise strengthens his resolve. He looks forward with determination, knowing this is his story until he fulfills his promise to Aicia, simply because he promised. A crowd gathers before the grand entrance of a massive, ornate building. In the lively marketplace, a merchant calls out to passers-by, advertising prices that are a steal. He boasts of a fantastical creature that runs, soars, and swims with unparalleled grace. Loki surveys the bustling marketplace from a high balcony, identifying himself as an employee of the Vinculum Company. A pair of onlookers are shocked to see his unfamiliar sector number, wondering where he could be from. Loki reveals that he belongs to Sector 4. One of the onlookers explains that it is not surprising they have not heard of it, as the Vinculum Company is divided into 4 distinct sectors. The first 3 sectors are publicly known: deliveries, sales, and manufacturing. But there is a 4th, more obscure sector. Sector 4 is known colloquially as the Company Cleaners, an eccentric group that handles supernatural phenomena and other odd jobs. Loki scoffs at the wild rumors that they employ murderers and immortals. He steps up to a desk and requests to be connected with Sector 4. A phone rings at the Sector 4 office. After a click, an operator answers, and Loki introduces himself, asking to speak with Saxon. The operator, delighted by his call, informs him that the boss is away on business and will not be back for about a week. Loki clarifies that he was just calling to see if Saxon had heard any rumors about his current location. The operator mentions that Saxon did in fact leave a message for him. Saxon's message instructs Loki to visit a local craftsman. Loki knocks on the door, identifies himself as an employee of the Vinculum Company, and asks for Mike Fisher. As the door opens, he is met by several maids. The maids stand together, their smiles unsettling. Loki stares, unnerved by their appearance. A woman's voice from the top of the stairs acknowledges his arrival. A woman with a gentle smile welcomes Loki and asks if he is there to see her husband. Loki recalls his phone call. The boss wanted him to handle a case of late deliveries from a doll maker, and Loki agreed upon realizing it might be connected to the bloody paintings. Loki remembers the operator mentioning that nearly every traveler passing the mansion is saved by the craftsman after getting injured. The possibility of a connection to the bloody paintings solidifies his decision to investigate. His sole mission is to burn all the bloody paintings. Loki asks for Mike Fisher's whereabouts. Just as Emma begins to answer, her husband's voice rings out, calling her name. A man storms in, demanding to know why Emma is out of bed when she should be resting. Emma quietly explains that she only came down for some water. He grabs her, insisting that the maids can take care of it and that she is too sick to be up. Emma meekly apologizes and says she will return to her room. Mike apologizes to Loki for the scene, and Loki introduces himself as being from the Vinculum Company. Loki gets straight to the point, asking why the shipments are delayed. Mike evasively claims he has not made anything worth shipping yet, and that it will take longer. Loki presses on, stating he has another question. Loki directly asks Mike if he knows about the witch's bloody paintings. Mike's eyes widen in alarm. Mike admits he's heard the rumors, recalling that his father told him about them when he was a child. He describes the legend of the 159 blood-red paintings created by a witch, capable of miracles that defy the laws of the world, but also bringing mysterious death. Loki finds it strange that his company is involved with such fairy tales, though Mike doubts their existence. Loki ignores his skepticism and declares his intention to stay until Mike finishes his dolls, an offer Mike accepts. Mike agrees, but tells Loki he has 2 conditions. While Loki is put to work hammering nails, Mike warns him to be careful. Mike explains that the first condition for staying is that Loki must help with household chores. His second condition is a strict warning: do not tell anyone about his wife. Loki asks if Emma is so ill that she's confined to her room, and Mike confirms it. Mike explains that she has no hope of recovery and can only rest, suggesting Loki could entertain her with stories of his travels. He then directs Loki to his next task, cutting the grass. Mike hands him a scythe. Loki expertly swings the scythe. Mike feigns a slip of his hand to test Loki, remarking on his impressive skill. He tells Loki that once he finishes, he'll be shown to his room. Mike then leads him inside. Loki comments on the sheer number of maids, and Mike explains he hired them after his wife became ill. Mike shows Loki to his assigned room. He points out his wife's room on the 2nd floor, telling Loki he's relying on him. Suddenly, a chandelier comes crashing down right behind Loki. Loki leaps out of the way just as the chandelier shatters on the floor. The maid who was on the ladder is frozen in shock. Loki approaches the trembling maid, telling her he has some questions about the previous guests. The maid simply smiles back at him. When Loki asks if she can talk, she just nods in confirmation that she cannot. He notices the broken banister. Loki realizes what's happening and walks up the stairs. The maid continues to smile as he leaves. The maid's face contorts into a wide-eyed, unsettling stare. Loki knocks on the door to Emma's room and is told to come in. Inside, he finds a woman with long dark hair in a bleak, messy room. Emma, now in a much nicer room, recognizes Loki. She offers to make him some tea. Loki cuts to the chase, asking if she's heard of the witch's bloody paintings, which startles her. Emma asks if he intends to tell her stories about the paintings. Loki changes the subject, asking if she knows why her husband's shipments are late, which she was unaware of. She finds it hard to believe, saying Mike works outside by day and in his workshop by night, using doll sales to pay for the maids. Admitting they rarely speak, Emma's story leads Loki to believe she is being kept as a prisoner. Emma insists her husband is just a little tactless. She recalls living in a mansion where he visited as a traveling puppeteer. For her, it was love at first sight. She left her home to start a new life with him, even when they struggled financially before his work took off. Emma fondly remembers that she was happy simply being with him. She apologizes, thinking her story must be boring for him. Loki's expression is stern, but he seems to be lost in a memory. Loki interrupts her, apologizing for the intrusion, and leaves. After he's gone, Emma sits by the window, smiling as she makes a snipping motion with her fingers. Loki finds Mike in his workshop, diligently carving among a crowd of dolls. A flashback shows a doctor informing Mike that his wife's time is short. Mike refuses to believe it, but the doctor warns him that Emma will soon reach her limit. The doctor attributes her illness to years of pushing herself too hard. Crushed by the news, Mike whispers Emma's name. A grotesque creature appears, moaning that it needs blood. Mike angrily tells the creature to get blood from a traveler. He yells at it to keep trying if it fails, saying he is too busy to deal with it. The creature groans in agreement. Meanwhile, one of the maids walks down the hall toward Emma's room. The maid enters the room, drawing a large knife. Her eyes are wide and lifeless. She raises the knife high above her head, ready to plunge it down. Suddenly, a second maid appears, deflecting the blow. The bed where Emma was sleeping is now empty, covered in feathers. Loki throws open the door to the workshop. Mike looks up, surprised. Loki demands an explanation. He asks Mike why he is using a bloody painting. Behind Loki, the maid's face begins to crack. The maid's face crumbles away to reveal the grotesque monster beneath, which complains of hunger. Mike shouts in confusion. Loki calmly informs him that this is the 12th time it has tried to attack, once targeting him and 11 times targeting the maids. Loki lays out the scheme. Mike has been staging accidents to collect blood from travelers. He asks Mike if his goal is simply to play with dolls. Loki presses further, questioning if Emma is just another doll to him, which causes Mike to snap and call him a bastard. Mike yells that Loki is acting high and mighty and could never understand his reasons. Loki states that he knows the painting is almost at its limit. He explains that blood acts as energy for the cursed paintings. Loki explains that because there were no corpses, Mike has been using only small amounts of blood. He warns Mike that with so little blood, he will inevitably lose control of the dolls. Emma, overhearing the commotion from her room, looks on in confusion. A horde of creaking, animated maids storms into Emma's bedroom. They surround her bed, their hands outstretched as they chant for blood. Loki bursts through the window, shattering the glass as he moves to protect Emma. Loki assesses the situation, noting the close quarters. He activates his weapon's second form, Absolution Frame. The frame transforms into a pair of deadly blades. Loki unleashes a devastating attack, destroying all the dolls in a single motion. As the black ooze of the creature leaks from the shattered dolls, Loki says he now understands. He realizes the creature was manipulating the dolls by weaving its body into their joints. Mike bursts into the room, shouting Emma's name. He looks at the destroyed dolls and his distraught wife, lamenting what he has done. Loki identifies the responsible artwork as painting number 24, The Marionette's Love. Loki reveals that the painting is based on a story Isia made up about a marionette who falls in love with its puppeteer and becomes human through his tears. He continues, explaining that the man who bought it was initially thrilled but became greedy, creating more dolls. This insatiable desire caused the painting to start demanding blood, leading to its current pitiful state. Loki invokes the name of the witch. Mike looks on, astonished. He prepares to seal the monstrous painting. Mike and Emma watch in horror. The monster is sealed back into the painting. Mike lunges forward, begging Loki to stop, insisting he needs the painting's power. Loki calmly asks if a bloody painting is what he really needs. Loki points out that humans have the freedom to use their own bodies and voices. He questions if that freedom is not enough. He then turns his sharp gaze to Emma, asking how long she intends to act like a doll. Emma asks her husband if he regrets marrying her. Mike is shocked by her question, as she explains she almost never sees him anymore. She describes how watching him work in the garden while the house filled with maids and furniture made her feel deeply alone. She felt completely alone in the large house. Mike confesses that he felt his efforts were never enough. He tearfully reminds her of the vow he made the day they met, to make her happy. He breaks down, convinced he has only caused her pain and robbed her of a better future. Despite his words, Emma's memories show her smiling happily with her friends, implying she felt otherwise. He blames himself for stealing her future, believing she suffered because she married someone like him. He apologizes over and over. Emma reaches out and takes his hand, gently calling him tactless. She makes a cutting gesture with her fingers and asks if he remembers it. In a flashback, a younger Emma tearfully tells Mike she is being forced into an arranged marriage to improve her family's influence. She explains that her father sees women as nothing more than vessels for childbirth, but that Mike is the one she truly loves. Young Mike, emotional, made a snipping gesture with his fingers. He declared that he was cutting off everything that was tying her down. Taking her hands, he proclaimed that she was free. Smiling through her tears, she asked if this was a proposal, fondly calling him tactless. She finishes her memory, calling him a tactless person as they walked away from her old home. She tells him that before he set her free, she was just a doll, and she has never once regretted her decision. Tears stream down her face as she tells her crying husband that he was the one who truly brought her to life. The sealed painting in Loki's hands begins to crackle. A memory surfaces. A young Asia hypothetically asked Loki what would happen if he became human and she was no longer sick, suggesting they could grow up together. Loki recalls what he thought at that moment. He remembers thinking that her idea sounded wonderful, as Mike and Emma embrace. A strange symbol glows in Loki's eye. He brushes his hair back as his weapon reforms. He turns to the couple and calls out to Mike. Mike stammers, unsure what to say. Loki turns to leave, reminding Mike not to be late with his next shipment. The couple watches him depart, their ordeal finally over. The sun shines over the city. The operator from Sector 4 greets her returning boss. Saxon, the head of Sector 4, makes a cheerful entrance, announcing his return to the bustling office. The staff welcomes him back, with some asking about souvenirs and others complimenting his beard. Saxon asks about Loki's whereabouts, and is told he called in about a week ago, prompting Saxon to assign him another job. He instructs Tuan to assist Loki with his investigation after finishing his current duties. Tuan shows Saxon a newspaper announcing the arrival of Mr. Fisher's new doll model. The staff marvels at how perfectly it captures Loki's deadpan expression, concluding that Mike must have really liked him. Saxon reads the article, then rallies his team, exclaiming that they can't let Loki show them up. Loki follows a path along a steep cliff, believing this abandoned highway will take him back to headquarters. Meanwhile, two village guards worry about the risks of traveling the highway and wish for a guide just as they notice Loki. The guards excitedly identify Loki's insignia, confirming he is from the Vinculum company they've been waiting for. Loki seems uninformed about their request, asking what they want from him. The lead guard explains that they requested help from the continent's greatest merchants to solve a series of murders and robberies. The guards start to have second thoughts, whispering that they were told 2 people would be sent. As Loki ponders their words, a figure moves in a blur, launching a surprise attack. Loki parries the attack, the force of the blow sending sparks flying. The attacker cheerfully greets a confused Loki, who demands to know who he is. Tuan formally introduces himself and Loki as representatives from Sector 4, much to Loki's annoyance and the guard's confusion over his eccentric personality and his strange handcuffs. Tuan's kleptomaniac tendencies get the better of him as he tries to pickpocket a guard, only to immediately regret it. The guards look on in disbelief as Tuan chastises himself for his behavior. Despite their strange helpers, the lead guard privately tells Loki they're desperate to prevent more deaths. They arrive at a disturbing scene in the woods, where the bodies of the victims are displayed. Tuan is horrified, while a guard reports that this is the 5th such incident, with the merchants dead and their cargo gone. A guard announces their arrival to the village mayor. The mayor greets them, explaining that he had to call on them because the sacred mecenat was unavailable. He points out the gruesome state of the victims, always found with their torsos missing and legs bound. Tuan looks to Loki, recognizing that this must be the work of a bloody painting. Crouching to examine the bodies, Tuan reasons that the public display is intentional, as bandits would normally hide their crimes. Loki surmises that the perpetrators are either overconfident or deliberately showing off their kills. The guards agree that leaving the investigation to professionals is the best course of action. Tuan theorizes that since cargo was also stolen, humans must be working with the bloody painting. He turns to Loki for his expert opinion. Loki gravely confirms that it is a bloody painting. Loki declares that they must prepare for any possibility. He analyzes the crime scene, noting that the removal of the torso seems crucial. The wounds suggest a saw-like weapon, and the absence of footprints implies the attacker can fly. Tuan is impressed, remarking on Loki's vast experience for his age, to which Loki claims to be over a century older. Tuan dismisses the comment with a laugh, calling Loki a joker. Tuan explains that Saxon informed him about Sector 4's real mission. Their true purpose is to recover the dangerous bloody paintings. Filled with enthusiasm, Tuan announces this is his first official bloody painting job and rallies an unamused Loki. A distraught young woman pushes through the crowd, begging to see her father. The mayor identifies her as the caravan's sole survivor. A guard adds that she was unconscious when they found her and is now on the verge of a breakdown as she grieves. Overcome with grief, she vows she will never forgive the monster. The guards try to console her, insisting there couldn't have been a real monster. She cries, saying she couldn't do anything to save them. Loki approaches the grieving girl. Loki calmly asks her to recount the events of the attack. She describes a terrifying black floating monster with many eyes and sharp teeth, explaining she only survived because she was thrown under the carriage. She shudders, unable to forget the creature's terrifying eyes. She turns to Loki, her plea unspoken. The girl begs Loki and Tuan to let her join them on their hunt. She passionately declares her desire for revenge, willing to be used as bait. While Tuan tries to dissuade her, Loki calmly agrees to her proposal. The mayor suggests they continue their discussion back in the village, where he has rooms prepared for them. On their way, Tuan questions Loki's intention to use the girl as bait. Loki states with grim determination that his priority is recovering the paintings, no matter the cost. Tuan is shocked by his partner's callousness, telling him he needs to change his attitude. Loki remains indifferent, claiming human opinions are meaningless to him. In a hideout filled with loot, bandits celebrate their good fortune. One of the men crassly propositions the doll creature from the previous incident. Their hooded leader cuts the revelry short, reminding them there is still work to be done. They arrive at a village nestled in a rocky cliff. The mayor shows them to the guest house. Loki asks a guard who treated Erin's injuries, and the guard replies that his wife did. Loki then asks if there was a specific symbol on her body. The mayor reports that no such symbol was found. Loki deduces that she is likely not the owner of the bloody painting. Erin expresses her guilt for being unconscious during her father's death. Tuan attempts to console her, saying her father would just be glad she survived. She remembers promising to always stay with her father. Her grief turns to anger as she reaffirms her vow for revenge. Loki questions her about any unusual events before the attack. Just then, she cries out, pointing towards an approaching group. A group of robed and masked individuals, the Sacred Masonat, makes a grand entrance into the village. The mayor and villagers greet their leader, the curator, with awe. The curator apologizes for being late and offers his condolences for the tragedy. He proclaims their duty is to protect all things beautiful, including the lives of the people. The villagers rejoice as the curator offers to handle the bandits and the burials at no cost. Tuan notes the increasing presence of the Sacred Mecenat. Tuan recounts the history of the Sacred Mecenat, who originally formed to protect the ancient tower of Bab Hel. He explains they evolved into a philanthropic organization funded by aristocrats. Now, their help is requested all over the continent. The guards speculate that with the Mecenat present, their job is done. Erin stares in shock at a hooded figure in the crowd. She trembles, identifying him as the man whose collapse on the road led to the caravan's ambush. As the man makes a run for it, Loki orders him to halt. Tuan shouts for the fleeing man to wait. Loki pushes through the onlookers to pursue him. The man dashes through the village streets. Loki grabs Tuan, holding him back from the chase. Erin tells him not to go, insisting it's too dangerous, and that the Sacred Mecenat will handle it. Tuan apologizes and embraces her, trying to calm her down. He tells her not to worry, and that everything will be okay. Without warning, Erin stabs Tuan in the forehead with a sharp object. Tuan is stunned by the sudden attack. She pulls a hidden blade from her glasses frame, coolly commenting on the situation. With a sinister smile, Aaron compliments Tuen on his sharp eyes. Tuan, annoyed at being fooled, claims he's reforming himself. He states that while he won't fight a woman, he needs to confirm her involvement in the murders. Aaron snaps her fingers, confirming she is the mastermind. With her signal, a horde of armed bandits appears, surrounding them completely. Tuan compliments Aaron's boldness, despite being vastly outnumbered. Aaron reveals her true target is Loki. She orders her men to attack, telling Tuen to die. Loki prepares for battle, activating his weapon's first form. A massive beast appears, crushing many of the bandits. Tuan sees that Loki has arrived, who confronts Aaron directly. Loki gets straight to the point, asking for the bloody painting's location. Aaron mocks him for his foolishness. She explains the entire incident was a fabricated trap. She leans in close and whispers that the trap was set for him. Loki deflects her advance. He demands to know her objective. She coyly tells him to think harder. Seeing his partner occupied, Tuen decides to handle the remaining bandits himself. He calmly engages the charging horde, effortlessly weaving through their attacks. Tuen gleefully promises to reform his opponents. Loki holds his blade to Aaron's neck, having cornered her. He warns her not to resist, and she seemingly surrenders. However, she begins to say something more. With a smirk, she reveals a quill dripping with blood, turning the tables on him. The mere sight of the blood makes Loki cry out in pain. Loki struggles against the sudden, debilitating pain. Aaron gloats, having confirmed his weakness to blood. Despite his agony, Loki manages to activate a defensive ability. Loki's absolution frame forms a shield, deflecting Aaron's attack. Aaron is surprised by his defense. The barrier holds strong against her relentless assault. The effort leaves Loki breathless and vulnerable. The curator arrives with his forces. He commands his men to arrest everyone involved in the fight. Loki whispers to Aaron, demanding answers. He bites down on his hand, trying to overcome his weakness. Aaron screams at Loki to go to hell. A dark, intense look fills Loki's eyes as he lunges forward. Loki is overcome by another wave of intense pain. Aaron tells him their time is up and calls him the witch's puppet before vanishing. Tuen rushes to his side, calling his name. Loki warns his partner to keep his distance. He feels an intense thirst. His body craves blood. In his delirium, he sees a vision of Acia, who reminds him of a promise they made. Tuen watches in alarm as Loki falls to the ground. Loki gets to his feet, brushing off any concern. Tuen stares in disbelief. He points out that Loki's wounds have vanished, but Loki tells him to shut up. Tuen asks about Aaron, and Loki confirms she escaped. They survey the scene, and Tuen confirms it wasn't a bloody painting incident. Tuen asks who Aaron could have been, but Loki has no answer. An unseen person asks Loki about an object in his hand. It's Saxon, remarking that he underestimated the pair. Inside the hideout, Saxon commends them for finding the bandits' map, while Tuen laments his thieving habits. The guards inspect a lifelike doll found amongst the stolen items. Loki stares at the doll with a look of stunned recognition. In a hidden grotto, Aaron tends to her injuries. The curator appears, commenting on her wounds. He tells her there's no room for defective artwork, and she seethes about her failure to kill Loki. The curator gently reminds her that she is a curator herself. The curator proclaims that their mission is to protect valuable artifacts, and those who would destroy the witch's legacy are their enemies. Loki looks on in disbelief at the doll. The doll is revealed to be a perfect image of Acia, posed inside a beautiful frame. Loki can only whisper her name. Shaken, he reaches toward the doll, murmuring that it can't be her. His finger makes contact with her cheek. Upon his touch, the scene shifts to a dreamlike reality where the Acia doll comes to life and takes his hand. Her eyes flutter open, and in their reflection, Loki's stunned expression is visible. Loki stands before her, speechless. The girl who looks just like Acia looks at him with curiosity and asks, "Who are you?" Amidst the rubble, onlookers are stunned to see that the doll is alive. Loki stares in disbelief at the girl, a perfect likeness of his beloved Acia, and whispers her name. The girl, however, simply looks back with a blush of confusion, asking who Aisha is. The merchants who found her pepper her with questions, but she is disoriented. The girl can only ask where she is, unable to remember anything. Later, the merchants thank Loki and his companion, departing with the hope that the girl will soon regain her memories. Tuan cheerfully assures the merchants that they can handle things from here. As the men head back to their village, they They comment on the strange but capable pair, confident that they will see the girl safely home. Tuan leads the girl towards the Grand Vinculum Company's headquarters. He explains that while Sector 1 searches for her parents, their group, Sector 4, will help her regain her memories. He welcomes her to their base. He proudly presents the rather dilapidated Sector 4 headquarters. The girl looks on in shock. They are greeted by a man Tuan recognizes as Saxon. Saxon recognizes the girl from their report and kindly asks for her name. The girl shows him a small card she was holding when she woke up, introducing herself as Li Che. Saxon welcomes her to Sector 4. He explains they just need to give her a quick medical checkup and cautions her to watch her step in the cluttered building. As Saxon leads them through the sprawling, repurposed black market that now serves as their home, Li Che is struck with amazement at the sight. Saxon explains that this is their base for tracking down what are known as the witch's bloody paintings. He describes them as special paintings created by a girl, given life through her blood and signature, which could bestow miracles. However, he notes that it is only natural for humans to wish for more. Pushed beyond their limits by human desire, the paintings grew thirsty for blood, transforming into tools of destruction. With the grim explanation over, Saxon announces their arrival at the lobby. They arrive to the scene of an explosion. Li Che is startled by the bickering of the Sector 4 members. A boisterous woman welcomes Loki and Saxon back, while Tuan complains about being overlooked. The woman spots Li Che and asks about her. She turns to Loki, leaning in close to ask how it feels to see someone who looks just like her. She smirks, delighting in his pained expression. Saxon breaks up the argument between his subordinates. He tells Loki to go seal a newly acquired bloody painting. Saxon tries to get everyone back on task. Tuan realizes that Li Che has slipped away in the confusion. Loki confronts the bloody painting, a nightmare-devouring creature. He is unaware that Li Che is watching him from nearby. Noting the creature has tasted blood, he prepares to destroy it. He declares he will put it out of its misery in the name of the witch. Loki strikes the painting, declaring it sealed. The creature dissolves back into the canvas. He turns to find Li Che standing right behind him and demands to know what she's doing there. Li Che timidly asks if he knows her, reminding him that he called her A earlier. The question triggers a painful memory, and Loki slams his hand against the cell bars, yelling at her to stop. Her resemblance to Asia is sickening to him. Her face, her voice, it's all too much. He can't stand being looked at by a stranger with Asia's eyes. He coldly warns her that if she is simply a bloody painting that has taken Asia's form, he will show her no mercy. He turns and walks away. Li Che is left behind, sobbing. Li Che cries, wondering if she said something to upset him. As her tears fall onto the sealed painting, the image begins to dissolve. She watches in horror as the canvas goes blank. Recalling a symbol that was on the painting, she redraws it on the blank canvas. A creature begins to emerge from her drawing. With a pop, a small white chick-like creature and a larger black rooster emerge from the painting. Li Che is startled by the appearance of the two creatures. The little chick, Q, begins to affectionately nuzzle against her face. Li Che starts to laugh, telling Q that it tickles. Her moment of joy is interrupted when several Sector 4 members burst in to take her for tests. The woman cheerfully threatens to draw every drop of blood from Li Che's body, terrifying her. Another member scolds her for being creepy. The rooster creature attacks him, sending him flying. Li Che grabs the canvas and makes a run for it with Q. The man yells for her to wait. Q lifts her into the air and flies away. Realizing the bird is a bloody painting, he shouts for her to come back. Panicked by the threat of having her blood drawn, Li Che flees. Tuan decides to go after her. Loki returns from his task, which Saxon notes is perfect timing. In his lab, Saxon updates Loki on their run-in with the Sacred Arts Foundation. He shares his theory that the Foundation is secretly collecting bloody paintings. He suspects they orchestrated the previous incident to eliminate Loki and stop him from destroying them. Saxon then shifts the topic to Li Che. He explains that she was a lifeless doll until Loki touched her, at which point she became human. A medical checkup revealed she's a completely normal girl. She just happens to look exactly like the witch. Saxon tells Loki that Sector 4 was created for his sake, and with no missing person reports for Li Che, she is now their responsibility. Their conversation is interrupted by a researcher holding the rooster, confirming it is a bloody painting. Meanwhile, Li Che realizes they're lost. Q speaks, suggesting they just need to fly upwards to get out. Hearing the others calling for her, Li Che panics and yells for them to run. They wander through the deserted headquarters, passing a large hall. They discover an old kitchen. They come across an overgrown garden. Suddenly, Q stops dead in its tracks, sensing something. Back in the lab, the rooster painting speaks through Q, asking if it can see Miss. Liche is shocked that it can talk. Loki holds the parent painting. He explains that it allows communication between the parent and chick paintings. Liche hears a familiar voice, Asia's, coming from Q, asking where she is. The voice then asks if they plan to burn the chick too. Liche defiantly declares she'll never let them. The connection cuts off, and back in the lab, Saxon notes that the painting seems safe for now. Loki is thrown into a memory. A younger Asia finishes a painting. She is overjoyed when her painting comes to life, calling it a miracle. A younger, incomplete version of himself tells her he's invisible to her because he's unfinished. The memory continues as Asia proudly shows off her new creation. She believes it will bring joy to everyone. Loki, however, looks on with doubt and apprehension. The memory darkens as men come to take Asia's creations away. She pleads with them to stop. She tearfully asks Loki if he will ever leave her. Back in the present, Liche happily tells Q they're almost at the surface. Loki appears before her, his eyes wide with alarm. He warns her not to come any closer. Tuon yells for her to look out. The ledge she is standing on crumbles beneath her feet. Tuon shouts Liche's name in warning. Loki lunges forward desperately to catch her. They land hard in a crash of dust and splintered wood. Liche coughs, trying to clear the dust from her lungs. Loki cushioned her fall, but he landed on top of Erin, the woman from the sacred Mecenat. Erin tries to snatch the chick painting from Liche's grasp. Loki, his voice strained, tells Erin to stop and not take the creature away. Liche tearfully pleads that the creature hasn't done anything wrong. She says that she wants to stay with him. Hearing Asia's exact words coming from a face so much like hers finally breaks him. Liche is confused by his reaction. He collapses, begging her not to say the same things as her, not with that face. Just then, Tuon and Saxon arrive. Tuon grabs Erin, checking if Liche is hurt. Saxon takes the painting from Liche. He tells her he'll save that one for last. As he walks away, Loki declares that he is merely prolonging the inevitable and resolves to burn all the bloody paintings, including himself. Saxon is stunned to hear from Liche what Loki said to her. Saxon watches Loki go, realizing how difficult this must be for him. He turns back to the frightened Liche, reassuring her about the upcoming medical checkup. Another member asks Liche if she happened to put any of her blood on the chick painting. Liche nervously admits that she accidentally erased part of the painting and then tried to fix it. The revelation shocks Saxon. In a lab, a researcher explains the stunning results of Liche's blood test to Loki and Saxon. She has the unique power to erase and recreate paintings with her own signature. The researcher delivers the final, shocking conclusion. That girl is the second witch. The blood of the creator has once again appeared in the world. The story begins in a bustling town market, filled with people and festivities. A memory surfaces of a young woman, confined behind bars, asking Loki what the outside world is like. She wistfully says that she wanted to see it at least once. In the present, Loki's expression is grim as he warns someone not to run because it's dangerous. At a crowded town festival, Loki instructs Liche to stay close, and she readily agrees. The rest of their group follows, discussing the need to buy her some clothes and underwear, while one of them feels Loki's glare from a distance. Mona expresses her surprise that Loki, who dislikes crowds, decided to come along. A flashback reveals their director suggested the shopping trip, an idea Tuon was very excited about. The flashback continues, showing the others agreeing to the shopping trip. Loki suddenly declares he's going too. He explains that he won't let Liche out of his sight due to her connection with the bloody paintings. Back in the present, the group comments on Loki's awkwardness, with one defending him as simply being shy. Tuon is caught with a camera and several wallets he seems to have swiped. He panics, realizing he's accidentally stolen things again. The camera's owner, a friendly photographer, approaches and calmly takes his camera back, explaining it's just a hobby of his. While Tuon apologizes profusely, the others are left wondering about the mysterious man. One of them asks if anyone else had their wallet stolen. Inside a clothing shop, Mona encourages Liche to choose an outfit. When Liche worries about the price, Mona reassures her they'll just take it out of Loki's pay. One of the men insists that the clothes are too plain. The other tells Liche she should pick the cutest things she can. The first man argues back that discretion is the essence of beauty. Lee Che is still hesitant about using Loki's money, but Mona insists she take the clothes. Mona asks if the others are also gathering paintings for Loki, noting she can't believe Saxon established Sector 4 just for him. One man explains he is searching for someone, and the hunt for paintings is just a means to an end. Another reveals he was driven from his country by a bloody painting and is trying to track it down. Mona cheerfully admits she's not an official member but does her best to help out. Saxon begins to explain Loki's situation. He apologizes to Lee Che on Loki's behalf. He explains that Loki is just feeling uncertain because she looks so much like his beloved witch. He asks her to try not to hold it against him. Loki sits silently in the boat. Lee Che looks at him nervously. From the riverbank, Saxon shouts that it seems they need to have a chat. She nervously apologizes and says she just wanted to talk to him. Loki cuts her off coldly, stating they have nothing to discuss. Lee Che is left looking crestfallen. Suddenly, Pokyu-chan leaps from Lee Che's lap and smacks Loki across the face. An annoyed Loki grabs the creature, demanding to know what that was for, as Lee Che calls out its name in concern. Lee Che asks if Pokyu-chan is all right. The small creature gives Loki a defiant look. The moment triggers a flashback for Loki. He remembers a younger Aisia, holding Pokyu-chan, asking him what had gotten into him. The memory shows them standing apart in a sparse room. The memory fades as he stares ahead, lost in thought. The boat lurches violently as Pokyu-chan shoves Loki. From the shore, the rest of the group shouts in confusion, wondering what just happened. Loki is thrown from the boat. Lee Che cries out his name in alarm. Loki and Pokyu-chan plunge into the water. One of the men on the dock offers to pull Lee Che's boat in. She asks about the two still in the river. Another member tells her to leave them be, reminding her they have more shopping to do. Lee Che finds herself back in the middle of the lively festival. Her expression is one of pure shock and concern as she is led away. He calls the scene magnificent. High on a hill overlooking the town, the photographer from earlier admires the scene, calling it a wonderful piece. He remarks that it was worth saving up all the blood for this moment. Peering through his camera lens, he spots something. He focuses on Lee Che in the crowd below. His satisfaction turns to confusion. Loki, soaked, climbs out of the river. Pokyu-chan observes that they were carried quite far downstream. The creature defiantly tells Loki to go to hell. An enraged Loki retorts that he'll burn it to a crisp first. Lee Che wonders what's going on. The once bustling square is now eerily quiet, the crowd frozen in place. She frantically calls out to Mona. She desperately asks why no one is moving. The photographer calmly walks towards Lee Che, asking why she is still able to move. Lee Che recognizes him from earlier. He smiles, remarking that cameras are a wonderful human invention because they can capture a fleeting instant in time. Lee Che stares in wide-eyed fear. The photographer explains that he just captured the village at its most beautiful moment. His expression twists with frustration as he notes that she is still moving. Lee Che recoils in fear. He mutters to himself, wondering if perhaps he didn't use enough blood. The photographer's grotesque camera begins to stir and drink from a flask held by his assistant. The photographer readies his camera once more. He announces his intention to try again as Lee Che watches in horror. The camera's lens whirls to life as the photographer tells Lee Che to say cheese. Terrified, she cries out and tries to run away. He grabs her cape, ordering her to hold still. Lee Che manages to slip away and hide in a narrow alley. The photographer stalks after her, his voice echoing as he calls for her to come out. She trembles in fear, trying to stay quiet. Just as she despairs, Pokyu-chan flies to her side. Lee Che tearfully embraces her small friend, relieved that it's safe. She quickly explains that everyone is frozen and asks where Loki is. Pokyu-chan shakes its head, indicating it doesn't know. Suddenly, a familiar voice comes from Pokyu-chan's Saxon. Lee Che quickly tells him they're in trouble. Saxon understands immediately, deducing it's the work of a bloody painting. He promises to send help and instructs her to avoid getting caught. When she asks about the others, he tells her to leave them for now. Lee Che trembles, remembering a time she was anxious. Mona had comforted her, giving her a choker with her name tag so she wouldn't lose it. She had tried to reassure Lee Che, who was struggling to understand everything. Saxon and the others had told her they'd be happy if she considered them family. She remembers their words, that they were a family, which gives her strength. The photographer finds her. He spots Pokyu-chan, now transformed to look like Saxon, flying towards him. He wonders where the creature came from but dismisses it as unimportant, his focus locked on Lee Che. Li Che stands her ground, asking the photographer why he's using the painting for such a purpose. He asks if she has a problem with it. She tells him she heard the witch created her paintings to make people happy. With tears in her eyes, she declares his actions would only make the paintings sad. Her passionate expression captures his interest, as Loki watches from nearby. Loki appears, his weapon drawn. Li Che calls out his name in relief. He recognizes the work of a bloody painting, while the photographer, furious about his damaged camera, is warned by Loki not to take Li Che's picture. Loki prepares to deflect an attack. The photographer snarls that Loki has committed the grave sin of interfering with his art, but Loki tells Li Che to run. Loki blocks the camera's flash with his sword. Li Che watches in awe. He lunges forward in a blur. His attack shatters the camera's viewfinder and the wall behind it. The photographer stares in disbelief at the destruction. Loki, panting from the effort, stumbles. He collapses to the ground, and Li Che rushes to his side. Loki is exhausted and thirsty. Li Che tearfully apologizes, seeing that his arm was injured while protecting her. He tells her to stop crying, reassuring her that his arm will heal once they stop the painting. Hearing this, Li Che cries with relief. Loki doesn't understand his own feelings. Whenever Li Che cries or laughs, he feels a burning sensation. It's not thirst, but a pain that tightens his chest. He wonders if it hurts because she looks like Acia, experiencing the world Acia longed for. Li Che looks up at him with concern. He explains that the camera is painting number 141, the magic box, originally a sketch by Acia. He tells her that just before Acia died, she used her blood to bring her sketches to life. She released them into the world in the hope they would make people happy. Loki says he hates humans for trampling on Acia's works. Li Che declares that this is all the more reason to stop the photographer. She tells him that meeting Pokyu-chan made her happy, and she will save everyone. Loki, taken aback by her spirit, tells her to get off him. Loki apologizes, admitting he's too injured to get up. Li Che, undeterred, asks if they're going to stop him together. Looking at her determined face, he agrees. The photographer finds them. He looks at their makeshift cover with disdain, commenting that it isn't very artistic. Li Che is surprised when Loki suddenly throws his jacket. He explains that the photographer will follow the drops of blood from his arm. The photographer turns to face the decoy, just as Loki planned. Loki explains they'll split up while the photographer is distracted. He knows he'll be the next target since he has a weapon. He tells Li Che that while she may not be strong, she has the power to erase the paintings. He reminds her that the paintings need 3 conditions to function, and removing one will stop it. He tells her to keep running and erase the signature. Li Che makes a desperate run for the painting's signature plate. The photographer turns in shock. As she touches it, the spell begins to break. The spell shatters, and the town square instantly returns to life. The townspeople are confused, wondering if someone was stabbed. The photographer screams in rage that his artwork has been ruined. The photographer's hulking assistant lunges at Li Che, but Loki intercepts him. Loki, injured but resolute, stands over his defeated foe. Li Che looks on with admiration. Li Che beams with a bright, relieved smile. Loki holds up the now sealed painting, identifying it as painting number 141, the magic box. Before the confused crowd, he declares it sealed in the name of the witch. One of the men complains that he didn't even notice the incident. The group celebrates over a meal, thrilled to have been part of a bloody painting case. One of them calls for Loki to come have a drink. Loki quietly gets up and walks away from the noisy table. In a memory, Acia calls out to Loki. In the present, Li Che calls out to him. He stops and tells her that he heard bread tastes better when dipped in soup. The others are stunned into silence, questioning when he started caring about food. Loki simply says that he's right, and that passing on this small joy was also one of Acia's wishes. The group walks towards a village, with Tuen expressing his excitement that Loki chose the clothes for Li Che. He also mentions that he returned the purse he'd taken earlier, and is eager to recover so he can see his brother Kan. A memory flashes of Li Che encountering a menacing, shadowy beast with glowing eyes in a dark forest. She is startled by the sudden appearance of the creature. She rubs her eyes, trying to clear her vision. When she looks again, the clearing is empty. Mona enthusiastically presents Li Che in her new outfit, while Saxon gives her a nod of approval. Back at their headquarters, Saxon expresses his relief that the group returned safely. He explains they've learned something new about Li Che's peculiar constitution. She was able to move even when the village was frozen by a painting. Loki recalls that the witch's own paintings never affected her, and Mona notes that it seems Lee Che is similarly unaffected. Their conversation is interrupted by a ringing phone, which Saxon goes to answer. On the phone, Saxon learns of a strange illness spreading in a village called Ishus. Tuan is surprised to hear the village's name. Saxon relays that some of their own from Sector 1 have contracted it while stocking up on the village's famous alcohol. He describes the gruesome symptoms and mentions sightings of a large black dog, which Loki immediately connects to a painting. Lee Che interjects, saying she met that very dog and it seemed to be in great pain. Lee Che tearfully explains that the dog asked her for help. Loki considers that the painting sought out Lee Che specifically. Filled with resolve, she declares that if someone is using the witch's drawings for evil, she wants to stop them. Saxon agrees, telling her she should be fine against a painting and instructs her to go to Ishus with Loki. He then calls for Tuan to join them. Tuan volunteers to go, but Loki warns him that he's at the greatest risk of infection, especially considering he has family there. Tuan insists, pleading to be allowed to go. Saxon relents, ordering the three of them to head to Ishus immediately. Tuan salutes in understanding as Saxon reminds them to be careful. Loki, Lee Che, and Tuan approach the village of Ishus, built around a large waterfall. A memory of Saxon's warning echoes as they near the village. They are suddenly stopped by a group of masked guards. The guards warn them to stay away, explaining that the case now involves the sacred mecenat. Loki narrows his eyes at the mention of the organization. Loki introduces his group from the Vinculum Company, stating their wish to cooperate since some of their own employees are infected. Their leader, Intermediate Curator Peter, orders his men to clear the path. He acknowledges Sector 4's jurisdiction but claims the sickness is beyond their capabilities, proposing they work together. He quietly admits to his subordinate that he doesn't expect them to leave even if ordered. Loki asks for an update on the situation. A guard explains that the sickness appeared 2 weeks ago and is spreading daily, even among their own ranks. He details the symptoms. Markings appear on the skin and gradually expand, leading to death, a process accelerated by an elevated heart rate. Lee Che notices Tuan looks stressed and asks if he's okay. He forces a smile, claiming it's just her imagination. The guard leads them towards a building where the infected are being nursed to suppress the expansion of their markings. They enter a large hall filled with sick and dying villagers. A muscular man in a wheelchair, his arm covered in the dark markings, looks up and recognizes Tuan. With a mix of shock and joy, Tuan cries out his brother's name. The markings on Kanryu's arm are clearly visible. Kanryu angrily demands to know what Tuan is doing there, while Tuan happily introduces Kanryu as his older brother. Kanryu reminds Tuan he wasn't supposed to return until his handcuffs were off, but Tuan cheerfully replies that he couldn't ignore his brother in his time of need. Kanryu's expression darkens as he tells Tuan he won't let him watch him die. Tuan dismisses his brother's dark words, promising they will fix him. Suddenly, Kanryu coughs up a dark substance as the markings on his arm creep further up. Tuan looks on in horror. Lee Che and Loki are shocked by the sudden turn. The onlookers panic, calling for medicine and calm. Loki shouts for a curator to help. Elsewhere in the hall, another man succumbs to the illness as his wife cries out in despair. A guard apologizes and asks Loki, Lee Che, and Tuan to wait outside. On the steps, Tuan begins to open up to Lee Che. Tuan explains that he was born with great vision and nimble fingers. These skills led him to a life of pickpocketing from a young age, and he was eventually recruited into a family. There he met his brothers, Kan and Cho, and he reminisces about how happy those days were. He continues, saying his brothers helped him change his ways. Though not related by blood, he considers them his true family. Lee Che, moved by his story, watches him with teary eyes. She declares they should be extra sure to succeed, but Loki, ever practical, states he'll just work as normal. Back inside, Kanryu gruffly tells them to get lost. Tuan retorts he won't leave, while Kanryu tells Loki to take him and go. Loki states he will, but only after he retrieves the painting. Tuan announces he's off to gather information and dashes away. Loki asks Kanryu if he's seen a black dog. Kanryu recalls seeing one after getting drunk and passing out on a path. He remembers it was looking down at him when he woke up, and that the markings appeared the very same day. Mona appears, playfully asking what's going on. Loki scolds another man, Seth, for drinking, but he retorts that if he's dying anyway, he might as well not do it sober. Mona laments getting the marks after coming all this way for alcohol. She then turns her attention to Lee Che, remarking how tasty she looks and touching her lip. Lee Che shivers from the strange comment. Loki quickly pulls her away from Mona. He announces that the Sector 1 people also saw the dog. Mona waves them off, bidding little Kitty farewell. Loki approaches a group of villagers, demanding they talk. One villager recounts how they were transporting alcohol when heavy rain forced them to stop for the night, only to be woken by screams. The villager finishes his story, describing a ginormous shadow looking down at them. Loki tries to calm the panicked villagers. Just then, Curator Peter arrives, wondering about the commotion. Loki gets straight to the point. He asks Peter if he knows about the witch's bloody paintings. Peter confirms he knows of the legend from 100 years ago. Loki states his belief that a painting is behind the deaths and demands to know its location, but Peter calmly replies that he does not know. Peter declares that it is their duty to preserve all that is beautiful and protect the lives of the people, and that is why they are there, risking their own lives. He asks Loki's group to conduct their painting hunt elsewhere. As Peter walks away, Tuon mutters that he's a slimy old man. Outside the hall, Tuon decides to organize the facts they've learned. He summarizes that the infected develop fatal markings, that there are conditions to the infection, and all victims have seen a black dog at night. Tuon suddenly decides to look around outside, telling Kanryu to head home. He asks Loki and Liche to watch his brother for him before dashing off. Kanryu calls out to Twen, but Liche approaches him instead. She asks him not to be mad, explaining that Tuon is just worried and wants to help. Kanryu sighs, calling his brother a fool. He realizes Twen is panicking as he runs through the rain. Kanryu asks Liche if she knows about the time Tuen infiltrated another organization. Kanryu explains that he and Bicho were in charge of Tuen back then. He taught Tuen martial arts, while Bichu taught him manners, and Tuen absorbed everything like a sponge. Kanryu admits that Tuen's earnestness rubbed off on them. Eventually, Kanryu and Bichu got together and freed him from that organization. He reveals that the infiltration was when he lost his legs and Bichu lost his life. Because of that past trauma, Tuen is now terrified and worries too much about them. He is afraid of ending up alone if anything were to happen to Kanryu. Kanryu asks if Loki and Liche would be Tuen's brothers in their stead. Liche nods eagerly. Loki, however, flatly says no. Kanryu remarks that Loki sounds just like Bicho and thanks Liche, patting her head. Their conversation is cut short as a different girl returns, calling out to Tuen before she's grabbed from behind. The black dog appears on the balcony, telepathically pleading for help. It grabs a young woman, who screams in terror. From below, Loki yells for it to stop. Tuen stumbles back, having lost his target. He laughs, remarking on the irony that he himself has now been infected. Liche asks him what happened. Tuen explains that something yanked him from behind, and he passed out before he felt any pain. When he came to, the telltale markings had appeared around the site of his injury. Loki theorizes that the painting's original ability to heal is influencing its current state, causing it to leave marks instead of killing instantly. He recognizes the work of the ivory idol beast. Liche confirms it is painting number 137. Liche reads from her book, explaining the ivory idol beast was a beautiful idol of a mountain god, and any wound it licked was instantly healed. She excitedly asks Loki for his thoughts. Loki deduces that all the infected must have had an injury licked by the beast without realizing it. In the hall, Kanryu struggles against his restraints as a nurse tries to calm him. Tuen declares that this is perfect, now he has no reason to leave. Tuen smiles, telling his brother that now, even if he dies, Tuen can follow right behind him. Enraged, Kanryu grabs him, demanding he repeat what he just said. Kanryu shoves Tuen to the ground. Defeated, he tells Tuen to do whatever he wants. He admits he doesn't even want to look at him right now. Tuen gets up and runs off as Liche tries to stop him, but Loki tells her to leave him be. She then insists Loki go after him instead. Liche pleads with Loki to go after Tuen, certain he'll understand his feelings. Loki ignores her and walks away. He turns to the crowd, asking if anyone has seen someone with a specific symbol on their body. He declares that whoever has it is the one behind everything, as a smug-looking Mona listens from the crowd. Kanryu's harsh words echo in Tuen's mind as he runs. He slips and falls on the rocky terrain. He looks up, startled. He finds himself before the black dog. Meanwhile, one of the curator's guards timidly speaks up, admitting he saw a similar symbol beneath Peter's neck a few days ago. The guard identifies the man with the symbol as Intermediate Curator Peter. Tuen stares at the mark on Peter, realizing it's an ownership seal. Peter, standing beside the beast, calmly asks if he's been spotted. He casually walks away. Peter whips his arm, sending a shockwave of energy towards Tuen. The blast slams into Tuen, who is still weak from his fall. Peter remarks that the markings must be painful and advises him to stay down, but Tuen struggles, refusing to give up. Loki arrives, finding Tuen on the ground as Peter greets him. Loki covers his nose and tells Tuen to go back to the hall, saying the smell of his blood is a distraction. Tuen grits his teeth in frustration. Tuen explodes in frustration, screaming at Loki, asking what he's supposed to do. He laments that he was there when Bishu died but couldn't save him, and now he's here again but isn't even allowed to try. Crouched by a tree, Tuen whispers that he's totally powerless. Loki's eyes widen as he watches. Lee Che's words from earlier echo in Loki's mind. She had pleaded with him to go after Tuen and understand his feelings. He watches Tuen cry, remembering the young boy's past joy and his current pain. Loki crouches nearby, observing his comrade's despair. Suddenly, Loki bonks Tuen on the head with the hilt of his weapon. Tuen looks up, confused. Loki points out that he could have dodged that any other day. A memory surfaces of Bicho, reminding him to pay attention. Kanryu's voice joins in, telling him that if he's going to fight, he must do so no matter what. The memory of Bichu telling him to struggle to the very last, to never give up, resonates with Loki. Tuen looks on with newfound determination. Peter applauds their touching display, but the beast remarks that unfortunately, they are out of time. The beast's thoughts cry out for help, a plea Loki seems to hear. He stands ready, telling the beast to rest easy as he promises to burn it until nothing remains. In a flashback, Tao Yuan recalls his past. He knew no life other than pickpocketing, struggling to survive each day. If caught, he was beaten until he lost consciousness. At his lowest point, lying in a filthy alley, he was approached by two men who mocked his failed attempt to steal from them. The men, who he would come to know as Big Brother Kan and Big Brother Cho, offered the young Tao Yuan a place with them. His skills were noted by their boss, who saw potential in the boy. One of the boss's subordinates reported that Tao Yuan had pilfered something without making a sound. The boss decided he wanted an effective kid he could raise. He ordered Kanryu and Bichu to take charge of the boy's training. Kanryu explained that the boss was looking for a newcomer and welcomed Tao Yuan with a large meal, promising intense training. Tao Yuan's stomach grumbled, but he remained cautious and hesitated to eat. Bicho observed that the boy was being cautious. Kanryu reassured him, telling him not to worry about being hit and declaring that they were already brothers. Tao Yuan quietly questioned the idea of being brothers. Kanryu elaborated that he and Bicho were the big brothers, and Tao Yuan was the little brother, meaning they ate from the same plates and watched each other's backs. He then forcefully shoved a bun into Tao Yuan's mouth, telling him to just eat up. Overwhelmed by the first act of kindness he'd received in a long time, Tao Yuan began to cry as he ate. The two older men watched him eat. Bichu asked if he understood now. His training began with learning to read, as Bichu explained that blending into a crowd was a crucial skill. When Tao Yuan asked what rehabilitation meant, Bichu defined it as turning from a bad phase into a good one. Bichu was strict, swatting him for resting his chin on his hands and telling him not to avoid his lessons. Tao Yuan boasted that his good eyes made him good at dodging, only to be bonked on the head by Kanryu. Kanryu taunted that he still couldn't dodge his attacks, while Bichu corrected his immature language. A montage of memories shows Tao Yuan sparring with Kanryu. He studied beside Bichu as he counted money. He playfully fought over food with his new brothers. Tao Yuan remembers that time with a simple, powerful feeling. He was happy. He grew to love the rough and short-tempered Big Brother Kan, and the expressionless but sometimes kind Big Brother Chu. He truly liked them, and believed the three of them could be together forever. But that changed when their boss arrived on horseback, commenting that the kid had grown bigger. Kanryu and Bichu rushed to greet him, asking what had happened. The boss informed them that a new arrogant group called the Kurao organization was gathering manpower, and they would not be raiding them. The boss gave Tao Yuan a mission: join the Kurao organization. He explained that while they weren't strong fighters, they managed casinos and had money and connections. The goal was for Tao Yuan to infiltrate them and steal their register of names. Kanryu protested that Tao Yuan was still just a kid. But the boss insisted it was for the sake of his brothers, reassuring Tao Yuan that he could do it. Tao Yuan agreed and went to the Kurao headquarters. To prove his worth, he expertly pickpocketed several items from the men in the crowded hall. He nervously presented his haul. Their leader, Fei Long, was impressed, remarking that his own youngsters could never steal so much with such ease. The men whose items were stolen apologized profusely to their boss, Mr. Feilong. Feilong dismissed them as hindrances and accepted Tao Yuan into the organization, stating that they were a meritocracy. To prove his point, he violently slammed a tray down on the heads of his incompetent subordinates. A startled Tao Yuan quietly accepted his new position. Life in the corral was brutal. Tao Yuan quickly learned that people died easily after being ordered to clean up a bloody mess. He did whatever was necessary to survive assault, blackmail, and pickpocketing, knowing that if he failed a mission, he'd be the next corpse. From a distance, he saw Kanryu and Bicho watching over him. The two groups had a tense encounter in the streets. Bicho warned Tao Yuan not to look at them, as they were from the rival Shui organization. Kanryu noticed how worn out Tao Yuan looked, but advised him not to show it, as it would be dangerous for him if they were noticed. Feilong then called Tao Yuan over. Feilong created a pretext, asking Tao Yuan to fetch his cigarettes from his room. Looking back, Tao Yuan realized he was rushing too much. He was eager to get the register from the safe. His only thought was to return to his two brothers as quickly as possible. As Tao Yuan opened the safe, Feilong appeared behind him, remarking on his habit of stealing things. From a rooftop, Kanryu and Bichu were watching, with Kanryu growing worried when Tao Yuan didn't come out. Bichu asked what time it was, and Kanryu replied that it was 8 o'clock. He noted it was strange, as they should have come out a while ago. Just then, a click signaled something was wrong. Feilong dragged the unconscious Tao Yuan by his hair. A subordinate burst in to report to the Shui boss that Tao Yuan had been discovered and that they needed help. Kanryu looked on in shock, but the boss was dismissive, questioning why they needed to help him. The boss coldly stated that kids like Tao Yuan are disposable. He considered the mission a loss, but not a huge one. He casually asked Kanryu if he could entrust him with educating another kid. Kanryu, stunned, asked what he was saying. The boss, unfazed, told him not to make him repeat himself and ordered him to back down. Outside, Bishu asked Kanryu if they were going to save him. He warned that breaking Tao Yuan out would only increase the animosity between their organizations, putting Kanryu himself in danger. Enraged, Kanryu yelled that he didn't care and that he wasn't leaving him. Feilong stood over the beaten Tao Yuan, admitting he was beat and maybe should have let him go on a bit longer. In a dark room filled with torture devices, a chained and bloodied Tao Yuan was being interrogated. Feilong demanded to know how much information he leaked. He grabbed Tao Yuan's face, telling him to spit it out. Through his pain, Tao Yuan thought that enduring was easier this way. He remembered a happy moment with his brothers under the stars. Just as Feilong decided to get the information by force, a subordinate arrived. The man announced that the president had come to see Mr. Feilong, leaving him surprised. Suddenly, Kanryu burst in and punched Feilong, sending him flying. Tao Yuan, freed from his chains, weakly called out to his big brother. Kanryu grabbed him and yelled that they were escaping immediately. As corral members shouted for them to be surrounded, Kanryu fought his way out. Kanryu fought through the guards. More reinforcements arrived, surprising him. Just then, Bichu appeared on horseback. He called out to Kanryu, announcing that he had secured an escape route and urging him not to get thrown off. As Kanryu and Tao Yuan rode to safety, Bicho stopped on a bridge. Kanryu yelled at him, asking what he was doing. Bichu explained he had planted explosives on the bridge, their only way forward, to increase their chances of survival. He revealed he couldn't use a fuse in the rain and would have to stay back. Kanryu called him a moron, saying this wasn't like him at all. Bichu calmly stated that he couldn't carry Tao Yuan and escape by himself. Tao Yuan woke up in Bicho's arms. He weakly asked what was happening. He tearfully pleaded that he didn't want the three of them to be separated. He promised to become rehabilitated so they could all live together again. Bichu corrected Tao Yuan's informal speech to a more polite form, lightly slapping his cheek. Tao Yuan asked what was wrong, noting that Bicho could have avoided the slap. Bicho told the boy that this was his atonement. He confessed that he knew Tao Yuan would be sent on the infiltration mission and had no plans to save him. But at some point, he began to worry about Tao Yuan's future. He urged him to rehabilitate himself, certain he could change even without him there. His final words to Tao Yuan were a plea to keep fighting no matter what. With that, the bridge exploded, and Tao Yuan screamed for Big Brother Cho. Back in the present, Tao Yuan remembers the promise he made that day. Loki tries to hold Tao Yuan back, asking what he's doing. Tao Yuan refuses to retreat to the auditorium and wait. He declares that if Loki is telling him to fight, then he will fight right here, to the death. Loki charges at the beast. He calls out his attack, Absolution Frame, third form. The beast deftly dodges his strike. Peter grins from the side. The beast's wound from the previous encounter drips a glowing substance. The wound on the beast heals instantly. Loki wonders aloud how much blood Peter gave it. Peter smirks, noting that Loki noticed the beast's excess blood absorption. He taunts them, saying he's only carrying out one part of a larger plan they'll die without ever knowing. Liche shouts Loki's name as he's slammed by the beast's tail. Loki gets back on his feet, stating it's not a problem. Taoyuan notices something strange about the beast's movements. Suddenly, the beast lunges, and Liche screams for Loki to get down. Taoyuan explains that Peter is likely giving the beast direct instructions, causing irregularities in its movements. He deduces that the reason the painting only moved at night is because Peter can only move at night, a fact Peter finds interesting. Taoyuan declares that even with the cloth covering his mouth, his eyes are good enough to understand what he's saying. Back in the hall, the villagers panic, believing the curator's claims that Peter caused the illness. Liche is confused by the commotion. Kanryu struggles in his wheelchair, coughing violently. A child calls out to him, offering to get Taoyuan, but he tells her it's okay. He grits his teeth, determined not to let Taoyuan see another big brother die. Liche rushes to Kanryu's side, reassuring him that it's okay. She tells him she knows what caused the illness and is sure Loki will do something. As she touches him, Kanryu is surprised to feel his body suddenly grow lighter. Other villagers notice that the spasms have stopped. Liche realizes that just as she was the only one who could move when the photo picture froze everyone, touching someone with this sickness seems to cure them. Realizing her ability, Liche wonders if she can save everyone and offers herself to the sick, asking them to touch her. In the forest, Taoyuan apologizes to Loki, frustrated that he can't read Peter's mouth. Peter, holding his mask, thanks him for his kind words, confirming Taoyuan's deduction. Loki, coughing, tells Taoyuan to get back. Taoyuan, now also afflicted with a cough, stumbles as the beast lunges toward him. The beast pins Taoyuan down, its massive tongue lashing out to absorb him. He cries out in pain as the creature's appendage wraps around him. Just as the beast is about to consume him, Taoyuan grabs its tongue. Peter and Loki look on in shock. He grins through the pain, remarking that he still has a bad habit of stealing things. Taoyuan rips the tongue clean off and throws it to Loki, who catches it. Taoyuan shouts that the beast is useless without its tongue. He prepares for another attack, calling out Absolution Frame, second form. The beast thinks that Loki is faster, as he closes the distance in an instant. Peter watches in disbelief. Loki prepares to seal the creature, invoking the name of the witch and identifying the painting as number 137, White Sacred Beast. Loki drives his weapon into the beast. As its form dissolves, its consciousness thanks him. With a final declaration, Loki seals the painting, releasing a burst of light and energy.